folks, Scott here with my 10-card one kit video featuring the Love From Lizi April 2021 card kit. This is Lizi's Really Dig You card kit, and it's all gardening all the time. As you can see, I do use the card stock that is provided in our kits to make my card bases. I do swap out the Love From Lizi alcohol-friendly white for some plain white cardstock from my stash. Now, I didn't have any huge revelations on what to do with this kit and how to play with it, so I was studying the stamp set and taking a good look at that, and it sure seemed to me that our little Eyelash Girl gardener here, it seemed to me that her hands looked like they could possibly be holding this shovel. So that was my first idea. That's what I started with. Our first card is on that soft lemon yellow card base, and we have a whole scene. I really dig you. There's our kit theme right there. I really dig you, with our little Eyelash Girl holding that shovel right there in front of her. It looks like she was meant to be hanging on to that shovel. I don't know if it was designed that way, but that's what I saw. So I did a lot of masking and stamping on this. I, of course, stamped the shovel first, and then I cut a little mask out of that. I do use Ink-a-Dink-a-Doo mask paper. I cut a mask for that, and then I stamped the girl on top of that, lining up her hands with the handle of that shovel. Then I stamped her. I'm stamping everything with VersaFine Onyx Black ink. And then I cut a mask for the girl as well, and I masked her out, and then I stamped the potting shed behind her. Now, I used some Hero Arts sandstone ink to stamp that shed behind her. I didn't really want it in black. I didn't want it competing with our girl in front. Wanted to give as much contrast between the two. I decided I needed a little bit more with this, so I stamped the little gardening tools hanging on the side of the shed, and I stamped our little watering can here on the right as well. I didn't bother to mask those out. I thought I could color those and cover up whatever was behind it from the shed. I ended up coloring the shed and the ground with my colored pencils. I wanted a real nice light look on that, plus it also gives me some nice wood grain as well. Then I took my Spectrum Noir alcohol markers and I colored up our little girl and the shovel and everything else. I did stamp the weather vane on top using Onyx Black ink. I did color in the sky using some really pale alcohol markers as well. We got little clouds, a little nice sky there. After everything was colored, I was having a hard time covering up the lines from the shed on this watering can. So I went ahead and stamped the watering can again and colored that with my markers, and then just fussy cut the body of that watering can out and glued that on top. I also lost some of the definition on the little signage pieces that are on that little shovel, so I just stamped that again on a scrap of white cardstock and then fussy cut those three little signs out and glued those on top. Those are nice and bright, fairly easy to read there. I trimmed this piece down to 4 inches by 5 1/4 and then matted that on a thin brown mat. I stamped the sentiment, "I really dig you," using VersaFine Onyx Black ink. I embossed that with some clear embossing powder, so it's got a little bit of shine to it. I glued everything down to the soft lemon yellow card base, and then I added a little bitty mini heart. This is a red glitter mini heart. That's the only bit of bling on this, with our little shiny sentiment. I really dig you. This is really nice, a really nice scene with our Eyelash Girl standing in front of her potting shed, shovel in hand, ready to start working in the garden. Although I do have to wonder if anybody actually works in their garden in a little frilly dress like that. maybe it's an old dress. I really dig you. Although I really didn't intend to. I used most of the image stamps in our stamp set on this first card, so I thought I'd dive into our big pack of ephemera pieces for this next card. We are on the pink card base, and we've got Remember Your Roots with all our potted ephemera pieces there. I cut a piece of white cardstock. This is 2 3/8 inches tall by 5.5, and I stamped the sentiment there again in onyx black ink. I did emboss that, of course, with some clear embossing powder. I took a piece of this floral pattern paper. I cut that to just under 3 inches by 5.5. I glued that down to my cardstock, glued my white panel on top of that, and then I took our Love From Lizi pink and silver peel-offs that we got in our kit last month and used those to line the edges of all of our pattern paper and white paper. That pink matches this card base perfectly. I then added all of our ephemera pots on this. These two are glued directly to the card front. These two have 1 layer of foam tape. Our front pot has 2 layers of foam tape behind that. I did take 2 of the pink mini hearts that were in the Really Dig You variety peel-off pack this month. They match those peel-offs perfectly. I added those 2 mini hearts on the sides of our sentiment there. Remember your roots, and don't forget to water your plants. Now, Lizi gave us some puns in this stamp set, which I always appreciate puns, but there were a couple of sentiments that made me scratch my head a little bit. This is one of them. On a white card base, we've got, "Don't let things bug you," with bugs. Lots and lots of bugs. I couldn't figure out what to do with this sentiment for the longest time, but then I realized that our Scattered Hearts stencil would work pretty good for bugs. Kind of looks like wings. So I made all those hearts into little bitty bugs. Now, I did fiddle with this for a little bit. I originally thought I would do all those wings in blue, but I didn't really care for that very much, so I tried some darker blues, lighter blues. Then I got to the brown, and I thought, oh, now that brown I think is going to work. So I did an entire panel of cardstock. I stenciled all of those hearts using, again, that Hero Arts sandstone ink. And then I took a little brown Pigma Micron pen, just a little Pigma Micron pen, and I added all the little eyes and the legs on those. I don't know if you can see that, but I also took my Stardust gel pen and I gave just a little dot of highlight on all those little bug eyes. Uh-oh, infestation. I took a piece of that Scattered Heart pattern paper, which I didn't turn into bugs. They are still hearts, but I cut a 3-inch piece of that, glued that to the middle of my white card base. I did outline that with the petrol blue pinstripe peel-offs from our kit. I die cut my little panel with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die, added that to the card front with some foam tape. I stamped this sentiment on a scrap of white cardstock, again with onyx black ink. I did emboss that, of course, again with some clear embossing powder. Don't let things bug you. I don't think it can get much buggier than this. That one tickled me. Okay, so another sentiment. We've got 5 sentiments in our stamp set. I am determined to use every single one of them. On the royal purple card base, we've got "Long time no see." Now, I felt like since I kind of adulterated that Scattered Heart stencil, that I should put that Scattered Heart stencil to use in the proper way. So I foiled this piece of pattern paper with my Deco Transfer Gel and Deco Foil. I just put my Deco Transfer Gel through that stencil on a piece of this cardstock. This is 2 1/4 by 5 1/4 inches tall. I used my Deco Foil Transfer Gel through that stencil, stenciled that piece of cardstock up, then laid a piece of gold foil on top of that, and ran that through my laminator. I thought those hearts went well along with this long time no see sentiment. Heaven knows there's lots of people I haven't seen in a long time, in a year at least. This is one of my favorite ways to add foil to a card. It's really inexpensive. Now that transfer gel is a 2-way transfer gel where you don't have to have a laminator to set it. You can set it with just pressure. You can use that duo transfer gel and run this through your die cutting machine for pressure, and it will stick to all of the places where you've got that transfer gel. I loved that. I added a thin little mat of white behind the back of that and then glued that down to my royal purple card base. I stamped the sentiment on a scrap of purple cardstock from my stash with Versamark ink and embossed that with some white embossing powder. I fussy cut that out for a nice little banner, added that to our card front with some foam tape. I added our little herb ephemera piece to the top here with some foam tape too, and a number of the gold sequins from our sequin mix. And of course I added one more little mini heart on the end of that sentiment in gold as well. I'm not sure what kind of herbs these are. I don't know of many flowering herbs, but that's okay. I think it gets the idea across. Long time no see. Nice little pun there. And for my last little head scratcher sentiment in this kit, this is on that great orange card base, and we've got Find Your Inner Peas. Now, I didn't see any peas in this kit. I didn't see any pea plants or peas, but I thought that our little glass dome displays here would carry out this theme. At least it suggests inner. I took a piece of this pink pattern paper that had the little orange circles on it. I die cut that with a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die, added a thin white mat behind that. I stamped our sentiment on top, again using VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and of course embossed that with some clear embossing powder. I stamped our little boots in our stamp set on that polka dot pattern paper, fussy cut those out, added a little bit of shading to those with some colored pencils, glued them together, and then attached them to the front of this card with a little foam tape. I took a bunch of our little gardening tool ephemera pieces and I outlined our little frame here, just glued those right down to the card front. I thought that made a really nice frame around this image, and then I added my two glass domes with some foam tape. Again, a single layer here, a double layer there, so there's a little extra dimension there. Find your inner peas. Okay, that covers all of the sentiments in our stamp set, so I can start playing with some sentiments of my own. For our next card, we had that little female scarecrow that I thought was terribly charming and completely unique. I wanted to use that on a card, so on our royal purple card base, we've got... Hey there. There's a pun for you. Hey there. So I took a piece of that scarecrow pattern paper. I die cut that with a Gina K oval die. I've got both the small and the large here. So I did the largest of the small for the pattern paper and then the largest of the large for the white mat behind that. I glued those both together. I took some of the mauve moon dust straight peel-offs that were also in our variety peel-off pack this month. I added 3 lines of those down the center of this card front. I glued my oval to the top of that. I printed this sentiment on a scrap of white cardstock. This is in the Brady Bunch remastered font. I trimmed that down, rounded the corners, added that to our card front with some foam tape, added our little scarecrow with some foam tape. We didn't have any purple enamel dots in our kit, so I dug through my past enamel dots from Lizzie and found these purple shiny ones. No glitter on those, just purple shiny. Actually worked perfect on this card. I added those to highlight the sentiment there. Now I did go in and change our scarecrow's eyes. If you look closely at the scarecrow on that pattern paper, you'll see she kind of has crazy, wide open blue eyes. It definitely makes her look a little demented, I thought. Is there such a thing as a zombie scarecrow? I thought it was kind of crazy. So I used a white gel pen and my black Pigma markers to give her a little more personality with a little bit more realistic eyes there. I know they're supposed to be buttons, but there's eyelashes there too. So eyelashes on buttons, I don't know. I thought she was a little scary, so hopefully this makes her a little less frightening. Hey there, a nice hello card. Now I couldn't resist this. This is one of our big pieces of ephemera. This is on a pink card base, and we've got Happy Mother's Day. I couldn't resist. This was a great big ephemera piece with all the flowers. I thought it was perfect for this little bit of a Happy Mother's Day pun. So I die cut this purple and pink dotted pattern paper with my Tonic Studios square layering basics, scalloped square layering basics. Now, of course, I did some partial die cutting so I could get this longer. I cut the top half of this, die cut it only to about there, then shifted that down, die cut the bottom of that. That gave me a nice rectangle that would fit on an A2 card. I then glued that down to a piece of white cardstock for a little thin mat. I think the small little scallops are definitely a nice little feminine touch. Now I was looking for another pattern paper to go behind this when I realized that we had that poker stencil that we got from our Lizzie kit in January of this year, January 21. That's the poker stencil. And I went ahead and ink blended that stencil onto our pink card base. I used Hero Art's Thistle Reactive ink. I figured there were pink dots on purple here, so we could put some purple dots on the pink background. I thought that worked just brilliantly. I love that background. Pink and purple, that's a bright, shiny Happy Mother's Day card. Happy Mother's Day card. For a final touch, I did go in with some of my old Studio Katia Cupid's Kiss crystals and added a bunch of those crystals around on the card just for a touch of shine, a little bit of sparkle on my Mother's Day card. I do think this is going to be the card I send to my mother this Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day. My mom loves a pun as much as anyone. Now, I was so pleased with how well our little eyelash girl and the shovel worked together that I wanted to do a card that was featured just the two of them. No big scene behind them, no shed, none of that extraneous stuff. So for our next card, we're on the orange card base again, and we've got another I Really Dig You card. I really like this one a lot. I stamped that shovel, masked that off, and then stamped our little eyelash girl behind her. I did all of that on the Love From Lizi super smooth alcohol-friendly cardstock. I stamped that with VersaFine Onyx Black ink and colored all of those with my Spectrum Noir alcohol markers. And then I did take the die from our kit and I used the matching die to die cut our little eyelash girl. I had to be careful right around here because that die would cut into the second sign on that shovel. But I took care, did a little hand cutting around the bottom half of her boots. I was very pleased with how she looked, and I was actually able to keep that signage fairly bright and readable. And I took a little, an old American Crafts border punch and punched the front edge of our cardstock with this little scalloped border design with hearts in it. And then I put a piece of craft cardstock behind that just to continue our card front to the edge. And then I took that craft cardstock and die cut a little wooden frame for this. This is with the Hero Arts wood frame infinity dies. And I added a piece of vellum behind that just to lighten the background behind our little girl here. I added a piece of that orange ribbon along the side, as well as a little orange bow I tied in that. I stamped the sentiment, again, using VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and I did emboss that with some clear embossing powder. I glued our frame directly to our card base. I added our little eyelash girl with some foam tape behind that. So then I was adding some of these little heart sequin pieces. Actually, they're like glitter pieces, little heart glitter pieces, when I realized that they fit inside of our hearts over here perfectly. So I filled all those hearts with that little glitter heart pieces. I love that. Came out really nice, really simple, fairly straightforward, but I think that packs a powerful punch. I really dig you. Now I did mask off the end of that sentiment where it goes out and makes a heart. I just masked that end off, centered that on the center of our card base. I really like that card, and I really dig you. I also had this idea for one of the smallest stamps in our stamp set. This is on a white card base, and we've got "You Are My True North." Oh, using that great weather vane on the top of the shed. I really like this one. I stamped the shed and that weather vane on a scrap of Lizi's alcohol-friendly cardstock, colored those with my Spectrum Noir alcohol markers. Now, I was going for a real verdigris patina on that weather vane. I actually looked up a picture of the Statue of Liberty and used that for my color choices here. This is like a blue-green and a gray and a light brown. I thought that came out really nice. It really looks like an old copper weather vane. I die cut my colored piece and the craft mat behind that using my Hero Arts nested circle dies. I actually printed this sentiment directly on my card base. This is the black Antiqua font for the caps and the black Jack font for the scripty words there. I'll have links to all the fonts I use on my website at cardcutups.com. You Are My True North. I added our little focal point on some foam tape to the front of this card and then added some of our brown enamel dots to the top of that for just a touch of glitter, a touch of dimension. You Are My True North. Love that white space. Now, I did get the add-on potting shed stamp set with this kit. Thank you, Lizi. And so I was determined to color one of those for you on our final soft lemon yellow card base. We've got "To plant a garden is to believe in tomorrow." I really like that. Oh, I was so pleased with this. So I stamped that big potting shed stamp on some Bristol Smooth cardstock, again using VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and then I colored this using my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. I knew we had lots of tiny images here, and I thought that the small, tiny points on those brush markers would be perfect to get in for some detailed coloring. I colored this whole thing with my Zig markers, and then I trimmed that down to 4 1/4 by 3 3/4 inches. And then I added a thin mat behind that. This is actually the plaid pattern paper that has the pink boots on it. But I missed the pink and got just the plaid on that. That was my major focal point there. I glued that down to the center of our yellow card base. I took some of our yellow ribbon and ran those down the 2 sides of our card front and then added some of the yellow glittery enamel dots on the side, a little sparkle, a little shine. I printed this sentiment using the Sign Painter font. I printed 2 lines of that just on some scrap cardstock and then die cut those out with some banner dies, mounted those to the card front with some foam tape. To plant a garden is to believe in tomorrow. I think this is a very hopeful, very encouraging card. I love that little scene there. I did, of course, go in and kind of corrected our little scarecrow's eyes so she's not quite as scary, has got a little bit more personality to her. To plant a garden is to believe in tomorrow. I believe in tomorrow. We have actually gotten both of our vaccines as of this week. We are fully vaccinated. It'll take a couple weeks for that to kick in for our true immunization. Woohoo! And I'm actually going back to work in April. I will be going back part-time for a little bit. We're shooting to get the rehearsal studios at our theater open in May. That's what we're shooting for. Cross your fingers. I will be going back to work part-time in April. I am so happy. I need a reason to get out of the house. So that's my 10 cards using the Love from Lizi April 2021 Really Dig You card kit. I did not actually use every single stamp in this kit. I used every stamp except for that larger watering can. I don't know why I didn't get to it. I overlooked it. I used 8 of our 16 pattern papers, so I still have 8 sheets left. That's about average for me. I seem to always use about half of our pattern papers. I did use our stencil a couple of times this month. I used a few sequins from our sequin mix. I used a few of our enamel dots. I used a little bit of the ribbon from our ribbon pack. I actually used one of the dies from our matching die sets. I used a good amount of ephemera, but of course have a ton left over. I used just a little bit of our petrol blue peel-offs, and I even used a little bit of the peel-offs from our add-on variety pack. All of my extras will find a loving home in my stash. It's always nice to have a new little Eyelash Girl in my stamp stash. Now, this kit presented me with a few head scratchers, but ultimately proved to be a really versatile kit for all of your gardening enthusiast friends. And we've got a really nice assortment of cards here, useful for a variety of occasions, and all sporting this very colorful spring palette. Now, this kit is still available at lovefromlizi.com. If I've managed to spark your imagination or give you a couple of ideas and you'd like to grab one for yourself, I would recommend doing that sooner rather than later. Most of Lizi's kits sell out fairly quickly. And if you do go shopping at Love From Lizi, please use my links in the description down below. It is always extremely helpful and is enthusiastically appreciated. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me here. I am continuously reminded of your generous support every time I post a new video. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please click that subscribe button at the top of the page. Click that little notification bell if you'd like to be notified when I post a new video. And please remember to like me, list me, pin me, post me, share me with all of your friends. Don't run with gardening shears. And I send you love, light, health, and humor. And as always, happy crafting. For more detailed information, better pictures, and product links, please visit my website at cardcutups.com.